So that's
Hello, this is Wave of Action, the shout out, and we're going to be discussing the world warfare that's happening globally right now and points on the issue at hand. And Matteo, P, Kiki, and yeah, hello.
So I guess Palestine will be the first one that's got the most conflict about. Well, not the most conflict, but most.
In the news, in the activist news right now.
Yeah, the big one.
Yeah.
And it's taken them a long time to get this level of support. You know, they knew that big campaigning for many years, but the level that where people are taking to the streets and things like that.
Yeah.
Because you know, I know that they're a Muslim country, but I never even I didn't know that the English Muslims was as it
the Balfour.
You know, as compared, you know, were prepared to take to the streets for the Palestinians. I didn't realise that they really supported them as much. I think a lot has come to the forefront over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I think actually, I don't think that people have realised what this Gaza Israeli kind of thing has actually done to the movement and to a change in activism. I don't doubt for a second now that we've hit that percentage of ball rolling in the movement now. I don't doubt that for a second. Everywhere I go now, there's been a shift, there's been a change, there's been people wanting it, and they're getting out, like you said, they're getting out on the streets and they're demanding it. I love it.
There's never been such unified action against imperialist aggression, which is exactly what it is, against the country. I mean, it's such a sad issue, but I mean, it's been going on for so long that I think a lot of people just don't. It's sad to say, but they just don't care about it as much as they probably should, because all you hear about it is that. And I think it's because of the intense amount of violence that's been going on recently, and because of unified activism on this topic that has never happened before, partly thanks to the internet.
Yeah, and people
that has actually made people more aware.
People blast the amount of the amount of photos and videos that go online at the minute, but is that not surely why people are out on the streets, because they're seeing it for what it is now? Even Israelis have turned around and said they didn't realise what was going on over there, even though you have got the handful that's sitting at the top of the stairs eating peanuts and watching them all being bombed and clapping. You know, you've not. They don't see the extent of it to what we do, what we're seeing now. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, they don't. And I think the internet has been a godsend in regards to that, and the way they've made people so aware of what is happening. And I mean, they've gone, you know, the Israeli government has gone on TV and tried to make excuses for bombing hospitals and various other things. But if you got to see, I mean, if you're a state and you say that Hamas is a terrorist organization, you're trying to say that you're above them. Surely you should act in such a way that you don't have to resort to bombing hospitals to try and catch a few of them while killing, you know, effectively hundreds of other innocent people that have done nothing to you whatsoever.
I can't imagine being a family trying to raise, you know, that's your homeland, you don't know anywhere else, that's your neighbourhood, that's where your parents have grown up, that is your life. And to be hated in your own country and murdered in your own country like they are, I couldn't, you know, well, my boys are part Palestinians, so obviously I'm a bit more, you know, I say go there, but for the grace of God, go them, if they could have been born in that country. I wonder how much pressure Israel can take before they are going to stop this current, you know, and I know it's been occupied for years, but the current aggression, how much more do they reckon, or are they just going to say, fuck it, carry it on?
They
don't really care, though.
No, but you've got the gas under Palestine, which is what this bit pretty much is all about, just like Iran and Iraq and all this kind of place, isn't it? They've got the gas, and we're at a stage now where land grab for resources, and I don't think they give a shit. I really don't think they give a shit about any kind of humanity or life. If they did, they wouldn't be bombing schools. They wouldn't. And the only terrorists I can actually see are Israel, are the Zionists. I don't see that. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing any evidence anywhere else. Give me the facts. Give me the facts of the other terrorists, because anything BBC tells me is bullshit. I know that. So that's not a fact. But give me any other kind of facts. The only terrorism I'm seeing is Israel is being told to stop. They're being told to not do this, not do that. No, we're not finished yet. You're not finished ethnic cleansing the country that you want to remove, that you've occupied and your settlers are living in, and you haven't got the good grace to just at least move yourself out the West Bank and Gaza and have a bit of ceasefire. You know, they haven't got the good grace, no, because of the gas. That's all it's about.
It's all resources and nothing. I mean, nothing has ever changed. It's always been about resources. You know, geopolitics always been about resources. That's all the latest wars have been about.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's all it's always about. And you're right. You know, there is no other effect of, apart from they are bombing and hurting innocent people. There was one really, really heartfelt interview I remember seeing quite recently about this issue, where this dad had lost, I think it was four of his 5 kids, and one of his kids was his oldest son survived, and he was sort of saying, "Oh, I'm going to join ISIS and do this, that, and the other," and so forth. And his dad was telling him not to be stupid. But then he turned to this reporter and said, I really want to remember exactly what he said, but it was basically along the lines of, you know, and then you wonder where this hatred comes from. And then when these people then do join these groups and attack the West and so forth, and bombs do go off in London, who are you going to blame? Are you going to blame the people that had lost everything and become desperate and then did stupid things to then turn to the West? Or are you going to blame the people that actually turned them to such desperation? You know, and which raised actually a huge issue in regards to, well...
Go.
No, I've finished, go on.
I was going to say, you only have to look at the kids, the way that they stand up to the soldiers there. They look them square in the eye. You know, these kids are going to be so damaged, so hurt, and lost. I mean, they've lost complete families.
Yeah. I heard a story.
That will breed terrorism. If you want to end the crisis over there, it's not going to ever be achieved by murdering people, because that is just going to feed it to generations after generation after generation.
But this generation's done.
There has to be compromise on Israel.
I heard a woman.
They have to get some land back.
A woman said that she puts her children in all 4 corners of the room in one room, so that if there was a missile to hit the house, she'd hopefully not lose all 4 altogether. And when you live and you can't sleep in Gaza, they can't sleep. You can't sleep in Gaza. Why would they be knocking on the roof of a family? They're saying they're targeting Hamas, and like I said, I'm sorry, but
that whole act in itself, that is a crime against human rights. To knock on somebody's house and say that they have 1 minute to get out. You know,
terrorism. They're terrorists.
That is terrorism. That's their home.
But who are they targeting?
You know,
that in itself is nothing to do with Hamas. What they're doing is, I mean, that is plain and simple. That is basically bulldozing an area to then replace it with a gas refinery. Because as soon as someone's house is destroyed, they know goddamn well that those people can't afford to rebuild their homes. They're gonna have to move.
To rebuild.
Yeah. So that land is now suddenly available. So as soon as all this blows over and Israel's killed enough people, made enough space available, the media will turn to the next crisis, probably the thing in the Ukraine. Then they're gonna stop. Then they're gonna take up all the land, create a nice little gas plant there, and make a hell of a lot of money from it.
Yep.
And so telling people that they're gonna bomb this house, I mean, how is that targeting an organization? How is that harming Hamas?
But it's Great Britain.
I saw a tweet last night go out for people in Palestine. If you are reporting in Palestine and uploading tweets or statuses to Facebook, make sure your location is turned off, because they are targeting people who are tweeting and reporting. You know, this isn't getting terrorists. This is getting.
So they've
if any other country Israel was bombing civilians the way that Israel are, there would be uproar. America and England like to play world peace with fucking every country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they would be uproar if it was anyone else.
I mean, could you imagine if Russia did this, if Russia did this in Poland, for example,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it wouldn't. You know, that would be, oh my God, this is an outrage. They have destroyed human rights, this, that, and the other. On the other side, this is perfectly fine.
Yeah, but there's been this general propaganda to create the conscientious that Gaza, Middle East, these people aren't important. This is what has been used over the mass amount of years. These people aren't important. I could not imagine even seeing anybody with a child with no body. There was a father lifting the child's head out of the wreckage, and I'm sorry, if you can turn around and slander me or anyone else for putting that on, then shame on you, because I'm sure that child's father feels just as pissed off at the fact that you can't watch what's going on. I'm sure he can't watch what's going on neither. And then you wonder why they go to people like their democratically elected government for help against Israel when they've got homemade missiles, they've got homemade weapons, they're using rocks and stones and things like that to throw against the world. Fourth superpower in the world. Israel are terrorists. Their army are terrorists. They're all terrorists. They need to be stopped immediately. And that's all there is to it. I don't think there is anything else to it. And they say that this ceasefire can happen if Hamas say that they're going to stop. Well, Hamas are part civilians. They're not an army like Israel. They are the civilians. They are the families.
There is not a single country in this world that the people would not defend their land, the people would not defend their homes. It is our basic human right to defend our home. Yeah. You know, if somebody wants to intrude it or do harm to us, it is our right to defend ourselves.
But it's not even...
You get kids... Over in Palestine, the kids are like throwing rocks at tanks and they get detained. You know, what happened to being a child and not being able to arrest children, not being responsible for your actions because you don't really fully understand the complications, because all they see is the hurt, the death and destruction, and they're just reacting to it.
Yeah, I mean, they're just angry. But the point is, it's not even just a right, it's human nature. And this is what, I mean, again, this is why history for me is so important, because if you look at the Second World War when the Nazis invaded France, it would be the equivalent of Britain asking the French, you know, not Hitler saying, okay, if France stop resisting, we're going to stop the war. It would just seem ludicrous for them to say, okay, yeah, that's fine, you know, France, stop resisting, let them take your land, let them take whatever you have, move away, and then everything will be fine. It doesn't work. Things don't work like that. Things just do not work like that.
It's insane.
All you have to do is look, and the trouble with all of this is that Israel as a country, I'm sorry, but just should not exist. It's a country that just should not exist.
Have we been naughty? What happened there?
No, I think you got kicked out, I think.
Yeah, it moved me. It says you've been removed from the call.
But yeah, no, as I was saying, it's Israel is simply a country that shouldn't exist, simply because that land was Palestine, up until the British, with pressure from America when they decolonized, created the Israeli state.
Before
for whatever reason.
Got involved, they lived happily together before the Britain and that got involved and offered it on the Balfour, and that was a legal movement as it was. So what we do, we as a country are allowing occupiers. We occupy St Paul's Cathedral, we get arrested because occupying is illegal, but we allow a whole country, not even a country, I'm sorry, we allow a whole bunch of settlers to move in on a country, a very religious country with you've got Jerusalem. Now come on, we know what problems that causes with religion as it is. We've got all these issues and we're allowing them to occupy that country and take it over. We've allowed way past Hitler. It wasn't right in South Africa, it's not right there.
No, it's not. But I think we have to look at Nelson Mandela and his realisation that you're going to have to come together and reach agreements. And that means, it's Israel that's not willing to compromise on this, giving of land and things like that. But this is what international pressure has to be placed on them. Sanctions, like they want to sanction Russia, for the airplane. We don't know whether Russia did that. We know that Israel is bombing the shit out of Gaza every night. You know, so we should put sanctions on them. We should all be boycotting places that sell Israeli stuff and companies that are Israeli and things like that. We need to start putting financial pressure on them to come to the peace tables with a compromise, because they have to give some land back. They have to. They have to. You know, they can't be spoiled little brats and take everything. If life ain't like that, we'd all want the world, but it ain't ours.
That wall needs to come down, and they need to learn to be civilized human beings.
They need to be friends.
That reminds me of the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
That reminds me of and the funny thing is that we always talk about history and these evil people in history and so forth, but we're doing the exact same thing. Maybe not directly, because Israel's not directly our involvement as the West, but in a way it is. And we are responsible for it, and we keep talking about the Russians as if it was the Russian military that shot down that plane. First of all, it's a potential hunch that it was pro-Russian separatists. Secondly, it wasn't the Russian army anyway, it were people supporting Russia. You know, so it's not even the Russian government doing it, it's people acting that like Russia. What's that got to do with the state of Russia? Very little. I mean, there may be a connection, they're supplying them with weapons and money, etc., but Israel's actually directly involved in doing that, so
when you've got the up a pipe to get top position, that Russia's going to be the first one that the US and Israel are going to want out of the way anyway. Because let's face it, Israel and US want to work together. Israel are going to attempt to be one of the top dogs in the New World Order, and that's obviously quite clear right now. They're all going to be doing it. They're all going to be tagging each other, blaming each other, sticking in with each other, trying to get this community, you know, this island to support them, and they're all just going to be pitching their own way towards the next superpower. Because let's face it, US has collapsed, the dollar's collapsed. That's it. You know, they're not going to be in the running for that anymore. So this is going to happen. We're going to have people like pissing up their posts.
Yeah, I mean, this is it, because the world order of before, where America basically did whatever they wanted with the world, has finished. Crimea was an obvious thing about that, where, I'm sorry, but Putin was for once in the right. He was in the right for humanitarian, you know, because Crimea is predominantly a Russian area, and the Ukrainians were being racist, or rather, they had a hatred for the Russian people in that area, and they were discriminating against them. So obviously, you as a neighbor and a stronger power, it's just nature. If the people that are like you, Russians, are being discriminated in another country, of course you're going to stand up for them, like everybody or any other country would do.
We've allowed neo-Nazis to rule Ukraine. How sick is that? They're actually doing that. They're actually doing that as a government. You know,
and think about it this way: is that the only part of
that's alright.
Yeah, and the only part of Ukraine which is actually safe now and is doing well is Crimea. Yeah. Everywhere else, where the Americans got involved, is now in complete and utter chaos, and there is bloodshed everywhere. Right-wing racist nutjobs are running amok, like in every other place that America has so far gotten itself involved in lately.
Yeah, destroyed every country it's bloody gone over to.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at that's part of the problem, is that the West has constantly fed us, oh, it's the bloody Muslims fighting again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People become complacent about it. They don't even realise the issue of it. They believe half the bullshit that they see on telly. You know, they don't realise that Palestine has been occupied for God knows how long. And, the whole history of it.
Had to learn to adapt. They've had to learn over years and years and thousands of years to learn that.
Water cut, power cut. You know, these people are pushed, and there's nowhere for them to go.
But the thing is, how are we going to, we've got Putin, but look at our government. How are we going to move forward in the right direction with the government that is friends with Israel? And I'm sorry, and I'll equally say that for Labour, where Labour people say that they're the people's persons, they are equally friends of Israel until they put Tony Blair in handcuffs and have him arrested for war crimes with Iraq. Then they are not friends of the earth. They are friends of Israel. They are friends of the US. They are friends of all these people that are going around slaughtering anyone and everyone and putting right-wing sectors within Europe. And this is the case. We are looking at a huge Hitler that we've never even ever experienced. We are in Orwellian, and they've put us here, and that's where they want us. And until we remove our government and any other government that has that kind of ideology, we're not going anywhere. We're just going to be stuck in that same ideology, that same era of we're going to tell. We need a revote right now.
I personally think I love the Palestinian protests in London. The amount of support they've got, fantastic. But protesting on a Saturday isn't really going to cause that much disruption. You know, when they've done the weekday ones at the embassy, that's a lot better. But when it's the weekend, you're not really going to be disrupting anything. And if you are going to do that, it has to be like a general strike, prolonged and sustained. You have to refuse to move from that area for days. You know, really apply pressure. Because marching, you know, yeah, it shows a number of support, but it's not getting reported. It's a day of inconvenience. We need to start applying a bit more pressure. I mean, that's where Anonymous is good with their, like, when they take down the sites and things like that, because that's actually hitting their infrastructure.
Yeah, and they took down, I think it was 500 sites quite recently.
Yeah.
I think it was, and
that to me is more productive than. I mean, I love to see that so many people are standing up for Gaza. I really do. But I really think that there comes a point when you can't just say we're protesting this Saturday, we're protesting next Saturday, we're protesting the Saturday after.
Do that as well. I think we should do both.
One Saturday you just turn up and refuse to fucking go, or go on a Monday when everyone's at the embassy and the embassy's really busy. Affect their business, you know. Start bringing London to a standstill so that it's affecting the big money. That's how you do it, not like at weekend.
But the thing is that I think it goes back to the discussion we had a couple of weeks ago, that it's that the people. I mean, we don't realize how much power we actually have, not as individuals because we're worthless as individuals in this economy, but as a grouping in society. As a society, we are immensely powerful, and like big businesses are pushing us and the governments around, we can also start to push them around, because and this is where the unions need to step up, if the unions had a bank where they kept money reserved for times of war, if you want to call it, you know, times of protest, effectively a war chest for when they did need to actually create some action, they could then say, right, we're going to pay your wages for the next 4 or 5 days, but we're all going to protest. All unions that can legally protest go out on a day of action for a week, and they can pay your wages for that week. Maybe slightly, maybe like £1 less or something, but for something.
Yeah.
I think Britain would fall like that.
It's work stopping people from coming out on those days.
It's not just work, it's money. It's all that. That's all that is the problem, and it's always been the problem. That is the main fundamental, is money. If people had secured the day, because no one wants to feel bad about this. I mean, if you had realistically a choice, if you could get paid to protest, or maybe get paid like £1 less to go out and actually do something good, or work at your 9 to 5 doing the same old stuff, everybody, and I mean the one that cares the least, maybe someone doesn't even know where Gaza is, would still say, yes, I would rather do that because it seems like a good cause than do my 9 to 5. I guarantee you're going to get about 100% turnout if the union stepped up and actually did what they're supposed to, and that is protect the workers when they want to strike.
Then that way, that's also another thing as well, that we wouldn't need that union if we had a correct government in place that would offer that in the first place. If we had something like Uruguay's government where he would possibly do, you know, you look at him and what he does and what money he gives to his people, do you think he would stop their day's wages just for them coming out to the streets to fight something that was right and human rights? And I think if we had a party, obviously I don't believe in the voting system as it stands right now anyway, but if we had a party in place that was up for these kind of things, you're right, we would have 100%, I think, out and fighting this, and then you would have it affect these big corporations and these big companies that are taking over the world, because there'd just be nobody there to. The only thing that would possibly spur is we need to make it clear. Go on the BDS movement and check out like the Israeli products. There's a barcode on there. I can't remember what it is. That the barcode for Israel products, and just stop buying them and focus only.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's quite a few websites which will give you a list of all the companies that are supportive or, you know, donors or run from Israel, not just like stuff that comes out. And
when you're on the strike, also don't buy Coca-Cola. Because that's kind of like, you know, it's like just boycott the lot. just the lot.
I mean, I think as people, you know, we have to seriously start looking and thinking, the only thing we know for sure, we're born, we die. That's all we know for sure. Everything else is just theory. Everything else is opinion. You know, we all have different opinions and different theories. It is not worth, no one should ever die because their theory differs from somebody else's. They should be persecuted because their theory is different to somebody else's, because we have no knowledge of the subject until we die. And the other thing we need to do is we need to say to ourselves, if this is our one life, and at the end of it, that is it, nothing. Are you still going to do things the same? Would you still really do the things the same? Would you really work as long as you do? Would you really sacrifice the amount of your life that you do to keep this system going?
Well, that's the thing about, what they were saying about Africa, in the sense that Africa is one of the most religious places in the world. And they were saying that if it wasn't, Africa would actually be most probably a much better place, because they wouldn't take the fact that they are only getting paid $1 a day for what they do. They would much rather fight and die for something different, because they think, okay, this is the only life we have. Instead, because they believe in organized religion and stuff, they think, okay, I'll take this stuff now, I'll work in these terrible conditions now, because when I die, I'm going to have a good life.
Yeah.
They have this. It's almost like a way of controlling, and it is a way of control. And religion has always been another way of control.
And it's so sad, because I know that the majority of people in this world, they want happiness, they want peace, and they just want to be, you know, have a good life. That's all they want. They don't want to go around harming people. They don't like the wars. They don't agree with them. They don't like the amount of money that's spent on them. And, you know, if that is what the majority of us want, it's about time we all stood up and fucking said it. Because
but that's the problem, is that we're not ready to fight for it. We're not ready to fight for it, I think. And it's not just that we're not ready to fight for it. I also think that the way we are fighting for it, I think, is also, if it is fair to say, I think it's wrong. In the sense that, in my belief, physical sort of aggression and physical protest and stuff aren't enough, because in this world all that matters is money. You know, it's a very, very simple society we live in. If you have money, you can do whatever you want. You can kill people. You can do whatever you want, and you can get away with it. So we're living in a very, the system may look complex, but it's actually very, very simple. If you have money, you can have everything you've ever wanted, and anything you could ever think of, you could have, as long as you have that paper. Realistically, that's all you need. So, as activists, if you want to change this kind of society, I think we've got to effectively fight with the same tools that they're using against us. And this is where I think, and I need to stress this, that the unions are one of the reasons, and maybe not even the unions, that there just needs to be something that will secure, because all that's stopping people from protesting and doing these kind of things is money. Because as soon as you stop working, they put you on such a poverty ladder that if you stop working for a day, you can't feed your family. So they make sure that you can't not work. And that's the thing, is that you can't not work and you can't save because you don't get enough to save. By the time you pay all your bills and stuff, that's the end of it.
That's the downside of it. There is no quality of life beyond work. You know, if work pays, right, for a start off, people in other countries would be a lot richer than they are. In this country, you can work a family of 2 full-time and still not be able to afford to go on nice family holidays. You know, to go somewhere in Cornwall this holiday probably costs the best part of £1,000. A lot of families haven't got that grant. And that grant's without even the spending money. You know, I've been looking at holidays because they hike the prices up for the school holidays, and you have to have enough wages so your kids can do karate or they can do dancing and things like that. They have the opportunity to learn things, because through doing different activities, they will learn what they're good at, and they will go on to be, you know, happier and more productive. So, are you still there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And stuff away, haven't they, so that we can't do that, and that we're not. They don't want us to be our best unless that best affects them. They don't want these talented people that might just pop out with work that weren't grown and bred and eaten in school, just in case you might have the.
That is holding back the whole human race, because the next greatest experiment, right, invention could be from the little kid, scruffy kid down the road whose mum ain't got 2 cents to rub together, but we are never going to know about it because no one ever invests any time or effort into them.
The thing is,
and that is where it's letting humanity down.
But the thing is that, I mean, we've got to realize is that, you know, the people in power, whoever it is, do not have the same priorities that you do. I mean, for them, this is the pinnacle of society. They don't want any more, because they have the cures they want, they have the cars they want, they have the luxuries they want. They don't want anything else. So for them, this is the pinnacle, and now all they have to do is make sure to stop these damn workers, these damn poor people, from evolving, from creating smart things, from being revolutionary. They want to keep us idiots. They want to keep us down, because they don't want anything else to happen. They don't need any more research. This is the pinnacle, they think, of society. So any change that happens is for the benefit of the rest, not for the 1%, because 1% don't care anymore. This is the pinnacle. That's it.
Yeah.
So the change isn't going to come from them. They're doing everything to keep us down. It's not. They're not being detrimental from that kid down the road not getting his idea out there, because they don't care about it. They don't need it. We do. Humanity does, but they indirectly do not need it.
No.
And I think that's where the things need to change. Is that we need to. I think money-wise, the 99% need to get more organized, in the sense that we're not going to get a better life by working harder, because it's not going to happen.
No.
I'm starting my own business, and I know how hard it is, because all you get taxed to hell and back for anything you do. Any little bit of penny you get from something that you work incredibly hard for, you get nothing back. So there's no point of working hard, because you're not getting anything out of it.
No. And
I do something because I believe in it, not because the money comes from it.
They've got us used to believing that's fine. That's normal. But it's not. It's not fine. It's not normal. They're paying for the luxury of their lives. And that's all we're paying them to live their lives in luxury. And it's just on, and it'll just keep going on and on and on if we allow it to go on. We need to, you're right, we do need to stop. But there's very few of us that do kind of try to break away and do these things, but it actually makes our lives unbearable if other people don't start jumping on and doing it too. Do you know what I mean? It makes your life hard. I can't go eat anything anywhere or do things that, or you know, just from being a vegetarian, it makes life frigging hard, because you can go in a shop, that's fine. You go to a back like street shop down in the Fens or something, you say, oh, I'd like what's your vegetarian options? You know, we are not catered for as a society, self-sustainable or one that isn't involved in this way, because wherever you go, it's catered for the people who are just part of the rat race, and that's all it is. And they make it incredibly hard. And until people start creating these businesses that will, there's nothing wrong with these businesses popping up that are catering for the people. Or change the currency system yourself. You know, there's that Bradbury pound and things like that. Just doing these little things to take the money back off of the people. You know, I saw somebody writing Free Palestine all over their money the other week, and the banks have to destroy that when it gets to their sort of end. They destroy it. It can pass from person to person, but as soon as it hits a bank, they've got to destroy it. They've got to find that money out of thin air then. So it's like, well, you know, possibly. Well, they would just, but there's going to be a point where they're not going to be able to, isn't there? Soon, there's got to be a point where, you know. Well, that would
because they don't really want me anymore. They just want it to go digital. Yeah. So if they are, that's all right. We'll go digital now.
Well, I mean, they don't really care.
I think the thing is, there comes a point where you have to take personal responsibility. You have to look at yourself. It's very easy to go about trying to convert other people to what we should be doing when we're not actually doing it ourselves.
No.
You know, we all know that we should be growing vegetables and things like that. You know, I've got some grown this year, and it sounds silly, but it would make a big difference. We should use smaller shops, local shops, because that money stays in local economies. But it's much more convenient to pop into Tesco's.
Yeah. But I mean, it's also a fact of I mean, also the problem is that, I mean, for example, people shop in Primark when it's one of the worst shops imaginable, but the clothes are so cheap. I mean, in a sense, yes, it is. We've got to take personal responsibility, and I do believe that. I mean, a lot of what's happening today is happening because we've allowed it to happen, and it is 100% our fault because there are more of us than there is of them. We have technically, collectively, you know, more opportunities to make change than they do, but because we're so complacent, we've allowed it to happen. But on top of that, I think now it's got to the point where it's not just about that; it's also about the fact that we are, in a sense, slaves. You can't avoid that. It's not just.
With the Primark thing, me and P were in Coventry the other day, and we were speaking to the market traders, and one of them actually turned around and said their lives have just been ruined since Primark come to Coventry. Well, you know, because people just want these cheap clothing. You're walking into, you know, they're choosing the clothes that are made from, you know, obviously we know how they're made, we know what their ethics are like, and we know that they're only forced into doing the stuff that is good for, you know, for society. And that we've destroyed a community just like that. The clothing stalls, and then you've got Tesco's moving next door with their cheap fruit and, you know, veg. Why bother going to a store and making the effort to walk over to a store when you've got it right there under Tesco's, along with your cheap meat and your cheap shoes and your cheap everything? And they've just destroyed the market and the British, you know.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, the thing about it, as I was saying, is it is slavery in the sense that it's not physical slavery because you're not physically chained, but it's more to do with the fact that it is slavery still because it's financial slavery in the sense that you have to be at work somewhere, chained to your desk between such a time and such a time. The amount of time you have left, you have to spend. You know, you have to go buy food, you have to go buy clothes, etc., etc. You're going to have to go to the cheapest stores because you can't afford to go anywhere else. These stores sometimes are even cheaper than small market stalls. Like Primark is one of the cheapest you can actually get around in some places. And if you can't afford to physically go green, you can't afford to physically buy clothes that are made locally because Primark is so cheap because they use child slavery. There is very little that you as an individual can do.
I'd even go to the extent of commuting, of saying with commuting, why not let communities grow? If you want a job in London, move to London. But you're sucking the money out of London when you're living out of London, you're commuting every day, and then you're commuting back and taking your wages back to wherever you live. You're using the public transport, you're using all this, you know, you're using all these resources when there's people in London that need jobs. You know, there's people, start having our bases again and taking it back to how we sort of were. Stop having trade coming in constantly for flip-flops and making a factory in Britain for an extra couple of quid. We compare work to make them an extra couple of quid. You know.
But how many people commute into London once lived in London but can now no longer afford to live in London?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, London's going to become very soon, if not already, a rich ghetto. It's necessary if you can live in London, you are of a certain, you have a certain amount of money, and everyone else will have to commute outside because they can't live in London anymore. I mean, rent is ridiculous here now.
Yeah. It should never have been that way. It should never have come to that.
Housing,
well for them.
Housing should never be a commodity. Should never be to that extent.
No.
I mean, the point is that housing and so forth, I mean, the thing about it all is that, again, it shouldn't be like that for us, but it should be like that for them. Because thinking about it from the 1%'s point of view, they want areas of the world where they can live in luxury and so forth without having to worry about these poor littering the place and so forth. They want ghettos. They want these ghettos where there aren't going to be protests, there aren't going to be the poor, destroying the environment, lacking the air, and so they want these. So for them, this is just a way of moving their, call it slaves, call it laborers, whatever you want to call it, moving their commodities, because that's what the workers are to them, away from them. Exactly. Because that's what it
People
is.
farm.
They
No
what they.
different from how Israel started, I suppose.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that, well, and it's exactly the same kind of thing. They do not want these people near them, and obviously nowhere near on that scale. But this is how it starts.
Well, they're just more open about it. They're
They're a lot more
close to money.
And they have so much power and lobbying, like in America and things like that, that they know they've got the support. I mean, when there was a vote in America yesterday about like action for Israel, and they voted against doing anything, despite the list of the number of breaches in the agreement. The UN has got a great big list of breaches by Israel. If we said it earlier, if this was Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, anything like that, they would be gunning to get in there. If Assad was doing, like they had like that when they tried to go to war with Syria.
Oh yeah.
People weren't sure which side to bat on.
Yeah.
Because there's so much bullshit now. People don't know. It's like with the planes, which side's telling the truth. Until the evidence is out, we don't really know. Because there's so much propaganda that goes around. So if they would be gunning for all these countries, shows just blatantly the level of support that none of them have spoken out to condemn the actions going on.
Yeah.
But I mean, sorry to keep going back to this, but I really do feel really, really strongly about it in the sense that we're just not organized.
No.
In the sense that, I mean, it's easy to say and it's hard to do, of course. But I mean, I think that the thing to come next, in a sense, because obviously you've got the People's Assembly, you've got Anonymous, you've got Wave, and so forth, that are organizing bodies, if you will, of action as such, because you're always going to need organizers to step things up and so forth. But I think what needs to happen next is almost like an insurance of some kind, or I remember the open rights group call it a war chest of sorts, because it is war in a sense. It's not a physical war, it's a war of who can survive the longest. And at the moment, a worker can't survive 2 days in protest because they can't get paid. Companies can survive for maybe a week if all unions went into protest. London could survive for maybe a week. And what we need to effectively do is to outlast them. What we're doing at the moment, in my eyes, is that we've got spirited people. Imagine being in the Middle East, you've got spirited people in a castle, you're being besieged, but you haven't spent a day saving up for any food. It just doesn't work, because you're going to fold in a matter of a couple of days, because you need food to survive. Like in this, you need money to survive. So for me, I think that is probably the next step. But when you start getting money involved, it takes a whole nother turn.
Yeah, I think that's when things would actually get nastier, and people would actually realise exactly what they were going against, because they would actually see a fall in the corporations. And if they don't, that is the corporation. That's what they are. It's just a bunch of banknotes all joined together, because you start taking the banknotes away, you start picking off the people.
It's like, for example, with what's his name, with Assange and WikiLeaks, for example. They had a war chest of sorts when the America was gunning for them, and PayPal just took it all from them. I know they had in donations. They had about $500,000, which all just disappeared. Disappeared. So again, but I think that, could you imagine, for instance, if all these workers from all these unions suddenly we're putting all their money together in a bank or in a pot or in a war chest, call it whatever you want, for a rainy day, then suddenly they call for action, be it with Palestine or whatever, then they get paid from the bank, all the unions giving them the money to protest, and so they're protesting for 3 days, 4 days, and then suddenly all this money disappeared. That would create such a massive...
It destroy them, but then at the same time...
But it would wake them up.
You've got why they're funding so much arms and military right now is because they're expecting it. This is what they expect. I don't know whether they believe we're capable of it, because at the minute we're not showing capability. We're not. You're right. We're not showing
I think
organisation.
they're expecting riots.
Yeah, that's what they expect. And
But if we can keep it, if you can do a sustained peaceful protest, if they did bring out like weaponry, it's them that's going to look the aggressor.
wouldn't need to be a protest if there was no that you wouldn't need to hit the streets, because they wouldn't have any streets to control. There wouldn't be any money in the system. There wouldn't be any money in the corporation
point is
itself. It's all borrowed money.
Yeah, and the soldier. I mean, don't forget that guns aren't live things. You need people for guns, right? And it's got to. I think if we are talking about a revolution of sorts, it has to be a Gandhi/Lenin kind of thing. That they both had the right idea, and what we need in this society is a mixture of both. You know, Gandhi's peacefulness with Lenin's amount of resource. Because when the Russian Revolution came out, the communists at the time, they had a lot of money behind them. They had a lot of money. They were saving. They were putting it together for the workers. So that when the workers went out on the streets, they were paid. They weren't there starving their families. They could bring home money for their people, so they could protest for days upon days upon days. And then the soldiers came out to obviously start to attack them, because that's how the system revolves. And that's exactly what's probably going to happen.
Get these workers back in. We're
Huh?
losing funds. Get these workers back in. We're losing funds.
But they're gonna. I mean, in fact is, and then if soldiers suddenly see all these workers coming out onto the streets, and if they start to hit them, and they keep this peace like Gandhi did for the Indian independence, soldiers aren't willing to shoot people.
No, that's the trouble.
Eventually, they're gonna lose this sort of. Why are we doing this? You know,
But
'cause they
wasn't-
have
I
people
don't
as
doubt
well.
for a second that's why drones weren't invented.
Hasn't there been? Like, I've heard of cases in America where people have been asked to sign that they'd be willing to shoot civilians if they need.
I've heard that. I can't remember when.
And a lot of them have been refusing.
Yeah, but these are just documents. I mean, what is a contract outside of this system? I mean, what, you know, you're signing this, so what? It's a piece of paper. It's made out of wood. You know,
Could you
people have
actually do
also,
it?
you know, you got to also realize that all these things that we sign and we do mean nothing in the real world.
They don't.
Absolutely
They mean-
nothing. And what I think, and what I remember, what's it called? And this iconic thing I remember, what's it called? When I was a child, the people telling me, you know, when you come to the real world, and it's just thinking, you don't know what the real world is, because the real world is past this system. Real world doesn't include money. This is a system that we've created to live in a certain way. Therefore, all the contracts and so forth are within this society and are only valid within this society. So just because soldiers sign that, yeah, I'm going to shoot a civilian, if they're faced with a child and mother begging for help, do you think they're really going to shoot them? Realistically? Maybe some would. Some of the slightly more mentally deranged.
So they're doing it.
I don't think Israel have a problem.
Israel do.
Israel don't.
But you see, a lot of it isn't soldiers. A lot of it is done through
Yeah.
planes and so forth, which desensitizes it completely. A lot of them don't shoot them point blank. Because there's a
I
big
think
difference between
That's where war has to stop as well. We have to make a stance and say we don't want this. Do you know, like that with Bradley Manning, what he put out, the video that he put out.
collateral murder.
Collateral murder, that's it. You know, it's you start them off on Xbox games.
Yeah.
And it's like they're just continuing to play an Xbox game. There's no accountability. There's no, you know, it's very easy to be trigger happy. But that's why you've got so many drones that kill, you know, like weddings and children.
Because it looks like a video game. I mean, to somebody that's played video games before, it looks fake to the point where, you know what, you know, it's clearly not real. To your brain, it doesn't seem real. And that's where drones become very dangerous. We actually, funny enough, we actually posted an article about it today.
Look,
Huh?
go on.
No, I was just going to
Carry
say, on the idea of drones and stuff, from what we were actually saying at the end of it is that drones don't control people. Drones don't. All they do is create animosity, because drones aren't an occupying force. They're not something that stops what's happening on the ground. All you're doing is bombing a load of people, making them even more angry. They're
Yeah.
eventually going to get drones themselves and start sending them over here. So we're very, very much in danger of having a world where, hold on, when you tell your kids, you're going to say, okay, run home from school because you don't know if a drone's going to pass through Peterborough.
Yeah.
You're getting to the point where drones are becoming almost like a commodity that people can buy, and as soon as that becomes available to everybody, how unlikely is it that eventually an organisation like Carousel, for example, in Britain gets hold of a drone and starts shooting people down in the West End of London? You know, goes on a rampage till it gets shot down. Because they're doing it over there and then coming back to the US, so they're obviously rightly going to say, well, why can't we launch one here and do the same here? And it's going to become like a desensitized form of warfare, which no one's going to win because we're both going to be massively angry at each other. No one's going to communicate, and we're just going to keep killing each other. And obviously for the 1% it's fine because they're culling the people.
Yeah. And it's like with that Bradley Manning video, it's the mentality that they breed into the army people, and that they're like, they sound like a bunch of lads sat around the Xbox playing a game. You know what I mean? There's no. I'd like to think if a troop was going to kill someone, that they was it was somber. It wasn't done with glee and like jeering on of each other and jokes about them and disrespect.
Which is exactly what the Israeli people are doing to the people of Gaza when they're sitting on top of these hilltops watching. They're not seeing the people actually in pain. But then again, a year ago, when we first saw them, before this all come out, they were putting them in the street, punching women in the face. They were they were letting Israeli children beat up Palestinian children. So we're a brainwashed bunch of people where they're almost the same way as the way that the British treat the people on benefits. This is what it's gearing towards. This is how it would have started in Israel v Palestine. That's what this is how people, they think of them as scum. They don't actually think of them as humans.
But that's part of being in an army, and we do it. We're that guilty, and that's why you've got rapes and things like that. You know, like that girl over in Afghanistan, I think it was, like 14-year-old girl. Her whole family was killed, and she was raped and killed. That is because you desensitize our forces into not thinking of the enemy as human beings. And when you do not think of somebody as a human being and you think of them as lesser, you will do whatever you can to dominate them. And that is why I have no doubt that rape and pillaging in other countries where there's war is widespread. And we probably, you know, as big as the pedo ring that we've got with the Parliament at the moment, you know, I should think that it's widespread.
Yeah.
I mean, you see it in like photos released from the prisons where they've sexually assaulted male prisoners. It's not that it's just a form of control, a form of power.
Yeah, no, you're right, totally right. And I think, and this is the thing, it's not just the army that they're doing it to, they're doing it to us. They weren't army people at the top of that hill, they were civilians, and that is what they felt of them. Now you look at half of the UK and you say the word Muslim, and with the propaganda that's been going on in the BBC and with the media and the government, and the way that we've been made to Channel 4's benefit streets, the way we've been made to feel about people on benefits, about people who the Muslim community, they're the one, or the foreigners coming over from other countries nicking our houses. They're not nicking our houses, you idiots. It's the fucking government. Wake up. Stop thinking, you know, sucking in this propaganda and seeing it as what it is, because we are not going to change this system until people realise it's the governments and the superpowers of the world that are actually the ones that are controlling the propaganda, because they're not going to come together as a collective if they've got to stand next to these people they're slurring propaganda against. That's why that's there. It's to divide us. It's to make sure that we don't ever come together. And it's a very, very immature mind that could ever think that somebody is a lesser human being than yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. But I would add to that it's not the government as such. It's the government is just a tool. It's not because governments have no power anymore. It's strictly massive corporations that are bigger than most governments, and the shareholders of those corporations are effectively the new kings. We've just reverted. People are called CEOs. They used to be called kings. People are called shareholders now. Back then they were called barons. Governments were called constables. It's all the same old rubbish that's just been recycled again.
Yeah.
Different
But
names,
then
same system.
corporations pay into our government to fund our system. So if our government, who is supposed to be the admin for, our whatever Royal Majesty, whoever she is, I don't know, whatever, these governments that pay into our system and they fund us, well, maybe if they start putting in for solar power, encouraging us to be self-sustainable, encouraging us to learn to live without having to take these corporations, but they're not. They're not doing that for us. They're just as equally to blame, although they don't have the power. But for God's sake, fight for us. Fight for us. Fight for our future, so we can actually live without because we're going to hit a collapse soon. The bubble is going to burst, and then people are going to need to be self-sustainable. What about these people on benefits that can't live without funding and stuff like that? There is going to be none of that to support people if it ever comes to to such an extent. And our government hasn't helped in 1 second in trying to meet the agenda of sort of ecological energy, solar powers, wind farms, things like this. None of them have invested in it. We're slow at even doing any of that. So not only are they taking the corporations' money and making us live on it, I think they're all equally they're all bastards. A lot of
but most of the politicians have got shares in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of them are.
A decent prime minister or president would teach us and say, look, guys, now's the time. Look, we're going to have to use this for now. Let's use it. Let's do it now. Let's put it towards something that's going to help us build our future and build it back up to what we should be. Not doing
But you see, it's what we talked about before. They don't want to. It's again. I mean, it is our fault in the sense that we keep saying, if they're this, that, and the other, they're not. I think we've got to realize that they're not. These governments are for us. We've got to realize them. I think with that, that discussion needs to end in the sense that they're not here for us.
No.
We've got to stop saying, if they were here for us, if they were really democratic, they're not. They're not democratic. They are here.
There's still people out there that have an immense trust in the government, though, and these are the ones that are making it very difficult for us to map a way forward. Because as a community, we need to be a community. So when you've got the community divided, it's impossible to create that self-sustainability. I could possibly do a garden of my own with vegetables, which I do. I'm not going to live on that a whole year. I want to work with people. I want to be on a bit of land and work that land and work for my food and work for my, and make my own water source and make my own things. But that land belongs to the government. They're making it impossible to move forward without allowing us as a community, all of us, Muslim, right wing, left wing, blah, 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 blah,
The thing
blah.
is,
It's impossible at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, they don't.
It's profitable.
Gone.
It's less profitable for the government. They don't want us to be selfish. They want us reliant because that keeps us working. That keeps us controllable.
Yeah, because it's hard. It's hard as a one person or 4 people or people who have commitments here and there. We can't band together. We could probably band together as activists, as a movement. But I've always thought possibly, right, we put 100 quid in each, get ourselves a big bit of land. Do you know what I mean? And we farm it. Nobody's willing to do this. Nobody's willing to get together because we need this. We need these houses. We need this. We need the cars. Create your own community. Let's just create our own worlds, our own way of living without and just cut them out. They're not going to get anywhere without us.
But you see, that's where I think there needs to be that safety, and that's why I think one of the biggest downfalls of the current way of thinking and the current way of dealing with the movement is that most people, most ordinary people, when I say ordinary, I mean people, plugged in, still trying to do the whole, American dream thing, won't or don't want to move because there is no safety net, there is no security. We've been living with this idea of security for so long that there needs to be that. It's the same with protests. Because if there was a fund of some kind, if there was some security, people would be more willing to do it. And I think that needs to be a recognition by organizers to say, you know what, we've been living with security for so long, to the idea that there is always a fall, but there's always a plan B. That humans now can't live, Western humans now can't live without that plan B and can't think of doing something without having a plan B. What if this fails? What if, getting together and the crop fails? How are we going to pay for this? How are we going to deal with that? All these what ifs start to come into their minds, and it is a way of control again, because some of the most successful revolutionaries, some of the most successful businessmen have always said, I've never had a plan B. It's either that or failure. But most people can't live like that. And I think that's where it comes up to, that there needs to be almost like, I think there needs to be an overlap almost, like a bridge to help people that are going from one side to the other.
Transition period.
Exactly.
Because, you don't want to go and live in a field and try being and have your kids taken off you.
No.
They've
got
they've got, and you can't feed them, so there's a lot of fear that makes it hard for people. And it'd be fantastic if we could do it. But my problem is that as a species, we have no vision. If I start a business, I think about where I want that business to go. If I'm making a film, I think about where the film is going to go. We live a life doing stuff for no point. I want a vision. I want us to work together to something in society, and I want to find a way that we find out what that vision, the majority of people's vision is for mankind. Because I just think that everything, we know what the Tories are going to work towards for their 5 years, 4 years. We know what they're going to do. We know how, pretty much, what path they're going to go, and we know little's going to change. But if we're doing all these little steps, what are we doing all these little steps and all these rules for? What's the great big picture? I want to know what that is, and I want to shape it really. But I think as a transition, it has to be like the Switzerland, universal basic income. That would allow people to go off and have a safety net while they built their own houses and got self-efficient.
Yeah.
And our energy sources need to change rather rapidly, I think. That's
the biggest, that's the more urgent thing, really. Yeah. That is incredibly urgent.
Yeah, very urgent. When you look at how the water pumps are, what pumps the water pumps that could be flooded, everything on this. Instantly, if the oil gets to a certain extent, where we know there's no oil, we know that now. There's no oil. That's it. They'll probably find somewhere else to pillage, but it's not going to be anything. That we need to learn to live without oil in a way where it's not our fuel source. And because right now, if they turned off the energy for our country with things like that, what happens to these places that were flooded? We've already experienced floods. These pumps that pump it into rivers rather than the little streams and things like that, they're all going to build back up again. There's so many changes that will happen with an oil rise and inflation in the oil price, which we won't be able to afford. That it's actually frightening to think of the loss that's going to happen with just that.
Yeah.
Well, I was watching a programme the other night, and I know that we spoke about this with Chris. There's a risk that a flare could knock out the national grid, like worldwide power, and how many deaths that would cause. Now, this programme, part of what it was covering was the Earth's magnetic field and how it's weakening, and that it's slow, but as it weakens, that risk is higher because that's what deflects things away from doing so much damage. If we know that this is a possibility, it surely should be more urgent to get people self-reliant and hospitals self-reliant, so that if it does happen, the amount of deaths will be minimalised, because, to be honest, it would knock out millions.
Yeah.
You think every aircraft,
That's something that needs a plan B.
every incubator, life support machine would be switched off.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the resources, it's a planetary kind of safety measure. There are so many arguments that could be made for getting people self-reliant.
Yeah.
But then, some people, I don't know really, because I haven't really looked into it that much. But the Agenda 21, people get funny when you say that, because they say, oh, that's what Agenda 21 wants. As all self-reliant or in cities, but not owning any land.
So I have to run off, but I'll see you not next week.
Yeah, we'll all go, I think.
But no, so sorry, I've just really got to run off because I got to be somewhere at, in about 20 minutes. But I'll catch you up next week.
All right then.
All right, take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.